All right, peace, everyone. Welcome back to Piper Carter Podcast. As you can see, I'm live here. I'm at an event. I'm at Alkebu-lan Village. If you just tuned in, I am at the Reparations Task Force Town Hall. I went on the historical bus tour, and it was amazing. And I'm learning about the work that the Detroit Reparations Task Force is doing. And I'm here with one of the members of the task force. And so I'm going to pass her the mic and I'm going to let her tell us who she is, what she's doing, like where the task force is and everything, and what's been going on and what we could look forward to.
Absolutely. Hey, y'all. My name is Sydney Calloway. I am the co-chair of the Detroit Reparations Task Force. And we are here at the Detroit Reparations Task Force Town Hall Day 2. So over these next 3 days, last 3 days, yesterday, today, and today, we've had an opportunity to take around our institutional partners, Columbia University, Howard University, who are working on the Black Audit Project under the instruction and facilitation of attorney Justin Hansford. And we had the opportunity to have the city historian, Jamon Jordan, take us around the city of Detroit in a very strategic way to give them a little preface to the work that they'll be doing. So we've partnered with them to ensure that we have a comprehensive impact analysis done. So their report is collecting the contemporary stories, contemporary data to help prove why we deserve reparations in the city of Detroit on a municipal level. So they're looking into all of the harms that the city of Detroit had their hand in. And the task force is going to take these stories, take this data, and it's going to help us inform our recommendations to City Council. So after 18 months, we'll be submitting a report to City Council talking about what we think we deserve on a municipal level in the form of reparations.
Okay, cool. And as you can see, we're sharing the mic. So I guess so I want to ask you like some pivotal questions because I know we're at the event, so I want to make sure. So help us understand because as I understand it, this is on a municipal level.
Yes.
So if we were talking federally, we would be talking about going back to the beginning of transatlantic slave trade.
Yes.
Where have y'all chosen to start and why?
So I believe we are probably looking at starting in the 1900s. Although there were slaves in the city of Detroit, the number of slaves might not speak to the magnitude of need for reparations, right? So we're not going to dismiss the fact that there were slaves in the city of Detroit. But in order for us to really make a large push for reparations on a municipal level, we're going to look at when Black people migrated here in the late 1800s, 1900s, especially when Henry Ford offered his employees $5 for factory workers. That's when we had a huge boom of Black people in the city, and that's when a northern style of Jim Crow began. So when you think of Jim Crow, when you think of reparations is chattel slavery, right? Like, yes, the physical label, the physical torture of Black people. But when we think of the North, it's like, oh, there's no slavery up there. No, we need to re-educate ourselves about what happened in our city and why we deserve and demand these reparations. And we have to talk about Northern Jim Crow. So those are more policy driven points of harm, right? So we're talking about the redlining. We're talking about the disparity that was imposed on us when it came to working and employment, right? When it came to our access to education and the opportunities we were provided. That's all Northern Jim Crow. It's a little more subtle, right? Although there were still very much so acts of violence from white people. And we learned about that today on our bus tour. It's more documented here that it was more strategic, right? It was more policy driven. So that's what we're looking at. And that's where we're starting. We are starting with when we came up here to search for, and when we came up here to earn that better style of living, how we were discounted and kept away from accessing that American dream.
So thanks for that. And then help us understand. So talk about the origin. You've been in the task force from the beginning, right?
Yes.
Okay. Educate us on the origin of the Detroit Reparations Task Force
Yes.
and its progression and evolution.
Yes. So the Detroit Reparations Task Force was an initiative, a ballot initiative that the city of Detroit voted for. The residents voted for this task force to be put together. And after a year or so, we finally came together. We were nominated. We filled out an application. Those of us who thought we could serve on this committee, on this task force, and we were nominated. We were interviewed. We were nominated by city council, and then they elected the 13 people. So that's where we started. We've been having our meetings. We're finally getting our public meeting cadence down. We're finally really getting into the community engagement portion of it, because this is the first ballot initiative for reparations in the nation that was decidedly and intentionally community driven. So this is why we need y'all. This is why we need our grassroots organizers to start organizing. This is why we need our mud root organizers to really get down there and start pulling more people into their organizations and bringing those people to our meetings. This is why we need those block clubs and those churches. We need them kids. We need our teenagers, because I don't plan on doing this forever. It's going to come to fruition soon, but we have to pass this knowledge on. We have to pass this fire on. But we need everybody, because 13 people cannot inform city council about what we believe reparations looks like on a municipal level.
So let's get into the controversy.
Yes.
We don't have to dig all the way down in it.
Okay.
But just for the sake of acknowledging it and not being like an ostrich and put our head in the sand and act like it doesn't exist. So help us understand that part, because word on the street is people are like, oh, that Detroit Reparations Task Force is messy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't you don't have to like name names if you don't want to name. I'm not trying to make you be love and hip hop, but I do, as a citizen,
Yes.
want to ask you, as a person that was nominated, for accountability of that. That's more what it is.
Absolutely,
Okay. All
absolutely,
right.
absolutely. So just like putting together any other kind of group, y'all, just like anytime you had to do a school class project and you did not get to select your team, there are always going to be some type of organizational struggle, right? Figuring out how your role, how you can contribute to the project, what your role will be in that project. And sometimes you might not get the role that you think you deserve, right? So there's a lot of wisdom on this task force. There's a lot of knowledge on this task force, but some people just don't understand their role. And we're getting into the swing of things, so which is fantastic. But it was exhausting to try and figure that out, and there was a little bit of a power struggle. There's a little bit of a just a little bit of struggle, right? So we're overcoming those obstacles, which is fantastic, but that's exactly where it came from. It's like, hey, we're a new group of people. I don't know you, you don't know me. So we had to get to know each other. And that takes time anytime you're working with a group of people. And then on something that is so controversial, so provocative, and has so much momentum right now, such a heavy task or topic, it's always going to be emotionally charged, right? So we have to make sure that we understand that it's not going to happen overnight, but it is going to happen. Even slow progress is still progress, right? So rest assured that we are always going to pay attention to what's going on around us and trying our best to work with different personalities, different levels of education, different levels of knowledge and wisdom, different generations, because there is a little bit of a generational gap. But that's where all of the tensions come from. That's what can get exhausting when you have to work with a group of people that you don't know, but you're trying to get something done. Everybody has their different ideas about how to do something. So that's where all of that came from. So it's okay, because that's what any group, even in your family, you're trying to figure out where y'all going on vacation. It's going to be a little back and forth, but we're getting beyond that and we're giving it back to the people. So we need the community to come in, make your demands, tell us. So we don't have to come up with these ideas by ourselves. We don't have to go back and forth with each other. We need y'all to tell us what to do.
And then, well, I want to shout out everyone listening in the chat. Ben Frank, and also to Chris Topher was saying, like, that's an African proverb. It's the ancestors are watching us, right? It says, so if we go fast, we go alone, but we go far when we go together, right? So what's the makeup of the task force? I think today on the bus tour, so are folks like people who have like worked in the city? Are they people who have experience with this? Are they Detroit residents who have no experience with this? Like who, like what kind of makeup like is the actual body of the task force?
Absolutely. So we have a a beautiful array of talent on the task force. Oh, yeah, thank you, no problem. Yes, yes. So a beautiful array of talent on the task force. We have those who are really close to politics. We have those who are scholars and very much so in academics. We have those of us who are new to the movement and have fresh eyes, fresh perspective. So we have a lot of energy. We have a lot of writers. We have a lot of innovative minds, a lot of imagination. So that's what's making up this task force. And then, of course, with reparations, none of us have ever done this before, right? Reparations is still, although a very old topic, right now it's fresh. It's a brand new. There's a new life to it, right? So we're coming, especially municipal reparations, because the reparations conversation has not always, but it's been federal more often than not. So this municipal reparations idea is fairly new, right? But a lot of momentum right now. So we're trying to do our best to bring justice to the asks and demands. So we like I said, are a beautiful array of talent. So that's what makes up this body.
And then I know you got to go do your event. It's almost time. So now, as I understand the whole reparations movement as it has existed, I'm talking about like nationally in Cobra, the whole thing.
Yes.
The framework was around studying, getting the funding to study and build the tools to understand the harms and understand the extent of the harms attached to a financial amount. But there was a plan that was in place, like I said, it's federal, put forth by John Conyers and others, that spoke to like what it would take on a systemic level, as well as giving people stipends of some sort. This research body that I met on the bus tour today, on the historic bus tour today, we were speaking about how, and I don't know if it's within the task force or if it's just within their work, that some folks are looking at it like, okay, this is a systemic thing. We've got to fix these structures or this infrastructure. We should also give checks. People shouldn't get checks. I know you still got to do all this work and you still got to, but kind of what's the temperature of the task force in this moment? Like, where are people? Are people, yeah.
Yeah. So we are trying our best to take a holistic approach to it, because a check is only going to go so far, right? Stipends are only going to go so far. But what they're not making anymore is land. And that's where they started, because 40 acres and a mule, we should have been had that. But even to this day, just the fact that we want to own our home and the parcel that it sits on, that's where you start building generational wealth. It's always going to be in real estate. It's always going to, and then also just having your home for mental stability. When you don't have to worry about where you're finna go after your lease is up or where you're finna go after they evict you. We want that type of sovereignty so that we can figure out the rest of it. So yes, we are talking about stipends and monetary compensation, but we also want stability, mental stability, when we want access to that stability. And then that also rolls into our mental health, right? And then our physical health, because our mental health is going to impact that. Then that's going to talk about our education, because ain't nobody worried about school and class if I don't know where I'm about to lay my head, right? So it's all very much so tied into that affordable housing piece, affordable quality housing, because it can be affordable all you want to, but if it's black mold, that's not going to help us at all. It's going to harm us, right? So it has to be affordable quality housing. The keyword is quality. And then it's economic development. So where's that wealth going to come from? How am I going to continue to sustain my lifestyle? So that's what we're very much so focused on. And that was in the ballot initiative. Like, yes, that's only 2 things, and they are vague, but they touch a lot of things, and it's all enmeshed and intertwined, but it helps to be able to eat the elephant one piece at a time, 2 things at a time. And then the next time we have an iteration like this or a group like this, maybe we'll focus on another 2 things, but at least we'll have this taken care of, right? So very much so a holistic approach, starting with affordable quality housing and economic development.
So you know what's interesting? The United States is one of the wealthiest nations in the world, right? If not the wealthiest. I'm not sure about
All right,
that.
so I see these table sessions.
We're starting the event. Hold on one second.
Just take a quick pause. So several people.
So
The pizza
You know what's interesting? They're talking about pizza now. So, like I said, the U.S. is like the wealthiest nation in the world. The conversation is always about where does the money come from, and as a person who's worked in the fashion industry and in industries that where I've seen like lots of money, I don't understand that question. Because the thing is like, there's money all over the place. There's tax abatements that are given to these billionaire corporations. There are tax incentives that are given to these billionaire corporations. These corporations that are, getting their welfare queens basically, but they're getting the benefits that citizens should get, right? And the citizens are now paying the price that the corporation should be paying, right? So something very simple. DTE has been owing tens of thousands of dollars for their water bill for like over a decade. At the same time, their water's still on, right? At the same time, the Detroit Water and Sewage Department has said that they have to. They had a whole plan to cut off 100,000 Detroiters' water because they said that they need the money, but they're taking this money from poor people. People who live off of Social Security, who live off of welfare, who are under earners, right? Under, paid low wage jobs, who have limited income, who have disabilities and all the things, right? And so I guess I'm just wondering, you know, within that conversation, when people say, where's the money coming from? I feel like I can clearly see where it's coming from. But let's hear from you about where you think the money's going to come from.
So Detroit is in a unique situation, right? A lot of other municipal reparations initiatives are using their tax base, but our tax base is Black. We can't pay ourselves, right? So we have to look at policies and we have to look at corporations. So that's what we're going to be working on. We're going after these corporations that have been doing us dirty for a long time, that have roots in slavery or chattel slavery, that have founders and owners, and that's who we're looking for. That's what we're going after. So we have to find a way to get them to fund this because we deserve it, right? So that's the short answer.
So I want to thank you. Before you go, can you just say your name again and your role in the task force and what you're looking forward to most?
So again, my name is Sydney Calloway. I am the co-chair for the Detroit Reparations Task Force, and I am really looking forward to hearing more from y'all so we can get this report done, so we can get this report to City Council, and so we can finally see some action, even on a small scale. But it's time for action. Reparations now.
So thank you for that. And so we're at the Reparations Task Force town hall. I'm gonna talk to some more people. Do you mind to pull like Baba Gibson over here? Okay. So thank you so much. So I'm here at Alkebu-lan Village, y'all. I don't know if y'all know, in Detroit we have this beautiful facility. It's called Alkebu-lan Village. It's been here for, I want to say, like 47 years in Detroit on the east side. And it's a community center. They do martial arts and all types of activities for families and youth. And so the Reparations Task Force has this town hall meeting here. I want to say there's might be like 60 people here, which is a pretty good turnout, to tell you the truth. Um, and I, really appreciate being able to hear from the task force themselves, like firsthand. I think what I want to do, I want to bring an elder into the space. He's headed over here now. Baba Gibson. He actually worked on the original reparations within Cobra, the national reparations within Cobra. Come here, Baba Gibson. Well, we're going to hear from Baba Victor Gibson. He's an educator, community leader, dedicated person. I'm going to hand you this mic. You got to talk into the mic like that so folks can hear you because it's loud. But just tell us, Baba, like your name and what you do and what's your relationship with, in Cobra and the whole reparations movement and what you know about the fight for reparations here in Detroit.
Okay. Good evening, whoever's listening to me. As she said, my name is Barbara Victor Gibson. And on the issue of reparations, I can say I sat at the feet of some of the greats. My first introduction was from a man who's transitioned named Reparation Ray, who kept up the fight of reparation, introduced it to a lot of us youngins at the time. Um, we also had a point of not just reparations where people were talking about getting money, which is what seems to be everybody's whole thing about how much money I'm gonna get. But we worked on the reparation when it comes to the different structural and community needs. And one of the needs that I became very endeared with and passionate with was the need of education, educating our children in the correct manner in which is necessary. So, with that being said, I'd like to give an honor to my first mentor of education, Dr. Clifford Dean Watson, who started and pushed and petitioned for the first African centered public, and I want to emphasize that word, public school system here in Detroit. And so, with his help, along with a whole plethora of activists, Queen Mother um, Joanne Watson was also an advocate during those times. And all this is part of the reparation, the healing. That's what we want reparations to do, start healing what has been taken from us. And one of the key things we know that was going to help us in our healing moving forward is education. Because the purpose of education, according to them, was to solve problems, not to just get a job, not to just get a PhD and an LD and all those other things, all those little letters, but to learn how to help us to help ourselves. So, with that being said, we moved on here at Detroit Public Schools. We became African centered curriculum. We built the curriculum from scratch. And so from 1990 to 1999, we were the state of the art in our reparational move for education. In fact, in 1997, Detroit Free Press, Detroit News, I should say, wrote an article on how successful we were by stating in the headlines that Detroit test scores soar. And soon after that statement was made in the national, on our newspaper, it hit the national headlines. They attacked us. We now look back in retrospect. We know critical race theory that is being kicked around recently in the last 5 or 6 years. That was part of that, to go back and destroy any and whitewash any and everything we can have to achieve. So our students were now pushing forward. Now we look back at history. We know the history in Cobra, the history of reparations, the history of healing our people, but we can't keep looking backwards. We can appreciate history, but the real push must be for the future. How will we answer the questions of the futures in 2025, 2050, 2055? What are we going to have for our children in the future? Looking back teaches us, but looking forward prepares us. And that's what we should be looking at now. In Cobra, I mean, we have groups that are splendid off in Cobra, ADOS, descendants of African slaves, in competition with in Cobra. This is a new set of we call it young people moving forward. I have no problem with that. Our young people get impatient with us old heads sometimes because we're not moving fast enough. We're not innovative enough. We don't know how to use computers in solving our problems. But we need to make sure that in our desire to move faster and get things accomplished much faster, that we don't stretch and pull away from the bridges that have got us here, the wisdom that we have in our elders. And I find that is the only problematic thing with that, because now we set up a competition between the Encobra group of the past and the forward thinkers of the IDOS group moving forward. We're not competing with our youth. We should be complimenting our youth. Our youth should not be seeing us as competitors, as old head, or useless antiques of the past, but using us as shoulders in which they can stand. Again, everything must be pointing towards the future. So I am proud to be able to say I'm still part of that. I still believe in that. Anything that divides us is no good. Anything that splits us in smaller group is no good. So everything about us must be for us, and it's all hands on deck. In Cobra, it's the beginning. the foundational, like foundational Africans, but we also know that these new generation of Africans who are moving forward, we need to also make sure that we join hands and maintain so we can push ourselves. And as elders, we must step aside and let these young people move us forward. And I have no problem with that because I'm tired. I don't wear too many gym shoes, Piper. So I'm not marching too much more than this, but I'm always willing to help. I'm always here, like I'm here for reparations today. Um, I never will not help, but I know there's only so many things and so many miles left in me to carry forward. But I'm always going to be available for my people if they need me, if they need my wisdom. If they just need me to pass the ammo. I don't care what it is. I'm willing to help and support us moving forward.
All right, thank you, Baba. So I think one of the so this reparations task force has been put together because they're talking about a municipal. We just talked to one of the task force members, and I know you were working on the national articulation, I should say. So far as like the local or the municipal one, they're looking at, I believe, is from the late 1800s and 1900s, and through what we call the Great Migration to now, right? And so attaching the systemic restructuring, I should say, around like how to, like you were saying, like repair the harms and all that kind of thing. And then I think, well, they haven't landed on like their plan. They're doing the they've hired this research team to kind of understand and give assessment so that the task force could then make a recommendation so they can give that so they can push for these things. But within that, there's like a compensatory thing, like you were saying, around like giving the monies and the checks. And I'm wondering, in terms of like your understanding that shift from the national to the local, like could you, like, what wisdom can you share to the task force that's like literally looking at that short time span?
Okay, and it's funny. I'm glad you brought that particular caveat up forward. The national. Let's go back. HR 40, instituted by Reparation Way government Congressman John Conyers, and HB 40. That legislation was a long time processing. I mean, they didn't even do an impact study. They just had it up there. And so that kind of stagnated. It just kind of rolled around and rolled around. It's like on a hamster wheel. It just kept coming around and around and around. Nobody was really doing anything. And that was like a filibuster. If you're looking at the federal level, if you're looking for the two houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives to get together to come to a resolution on how we're going to handle reparations, they was able to filibuster that and keep it out the public's eye. That was number one. Keep it out the public's eye. And so a lot of people today, the last 20 years, didn't know nothing about HB 40. So now HR 40. So now that we're looking at this new, by bringing it down to the municipal level, we've restarted the conversation. So that's a positive. We do have a conversation. And being on a smaller scale, we can get behind it on a smaller scale and push it forward individually. So even if Detroit, and believe me, we got some firewalls trying to stop us. But in other cities where we can see where it's been, the task force have come up with the implications, come up with impact studies, made resolutions, we can see it's kind of kickstarted. So instead of trying to swallow bite the whole elephant, let's start working on bits and pieces. I think that's what the municipal power. So even if Detroit is assigned to the ankles of the elephant, and we might not be doing it right, but somebody who's assigned to the nose or the shoulders or the ears, maybe they can also work it. So we ain't trying to swallow the whole thing at one time. So the municipal part, they can still kind of weed us down, but we have a lot more people paying attention, a lot more people bringing the energies. So wherever we are, if it's California, if it's Illinois, if it's Detroit, if it's you follow me, Alabama, there are people now picking it up and carrying it. Other than that, we were kind of sitting back when HR 4 was first introduced. We're sitting back waiting for somebody to do something, to tell us something. So this way, we've kind of given it more life. So I'm hoping that might be a strategy. It can still be kind of, it can still kind of hurt us moving forward. But anytime the conversation is being had, now if we can quit talking about Kelsey and Taylor Swift and start talking about something really relevant for us, I think that's a good thing. If we can start looking at us in our individual silos, because I think now all we have to do now is start connecting the dots, connecting Baltimore with Philadelphia, with Detroit, with Cleveland, with Chicago. Let's start connecting each city and its people. And so when the people move, it's going to take everybody to move at the same time if things going to be effective.
Sante Baba, I'm gonna let you get back and listen to, because you were doing some work here. You came for a reason, but I thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you, Baba. Love you too. So I'm gonna, Baba, can you ask that young lady right there with the blonde hair to come on over here at this table here, with the black? Yeah, I know, I know. Wait, you're the mic. You tell me later. So there's a lot of I'm gonna say people working on this issue, and so we're here at the town hall, and I want to introduce you to some of the people that are working on this, um, and just hear from the people so that are actually working on this issue. So this is one of the people I met at the on the bus tour, and I was shocked. Now you see why I was shocked. So well, basically, so right now what I'm doing at the town hall, I'm kind of just giving recaps of like what is the task force. So we spoke to one of the task force members. Baba Gibson is an elder. He works from in Cobra, and so he kind of gave us a historical and maybe an elder perspective and understanding. So you're here in Detroit doing this work. This last 3 days, you've been working on this for a while. So maybe give us your name, what you do, who you're working with, and like what your role is like in this whole thing.
Sure. Thank you.
And the mic is just because it's
Okay. Yeah. First of all, my name is Linda Mann, and I am a adjunct associate professor at Columbia University. More importantly, about 5 years ago, we formed an organization called the African American Redress Network, which is a collaboration between Howard University and Columbia University. And we've been working on reparations in the United States. So we actually worked alongside elder woman Robin Rue Simmons when they passed reparations in Evanston. And I'm glad you brought up the legacy organizations of NCOBRA, because we have worked alongside NCOBRA and NARC. These legacy organizations that have been in the Black community have been working on reparations for generations, and have historical underpinnings with some of the most renowned reparationists, like Audley Moore. And so those organizations are very important, and we really take lead from a lot of them and make sure that we have members of those legacy organizations informing us on our work as well. But essentially, we work with communities that are advancing reparations. We basically do research in a completely different way. Instead of coming in and kind of saying, oh, we went through all of this peer-reviewed journals and this is what we found. We actually come into communities to be basically listening and learners, because communities are the field experts. They are the knowledge producers, and sadly, for generations, Black-led organizations have been filling the gap of where the government has disinvested and discriminated and failed them. And so by spending time in the community and hearing from organizations such as you, Piper, and the work that you do, we're able to understand a little bit about how policy could has already worked, and in what ways might the government consider engaging with communities to actually advance reparations and to make it a more systematic part of their government. Because what we have to understand is that the state of Black and Brown communities, and particularly the communities of African descent, didn't happen by happenstance. They were very intentional. I mean, just in the past 3 days, I've been thinking about the layered impacts of harms. So if you start with enslavement, that's the first layer. And then you have Jim Crow and segregation and the separation of races. That's another one. And then you have the Gilded Age, where we have industry coming in, so Ford and all of these industries coming in. And yes, they did employ people and they gave them a fair money at that time, but they also horribly polluted their communities. And the actual disinvestment in those communities from an environmental injustice perspective has ended up resulting in water insecurity and health issues such as asthma, such as cancer, such as infant mortality rate. So that's another harm. That's another layered effect. Then you've got you've got the FHA and housing and redlining, and again another redistribution of the Black community. And then again you have even urban sprawl and urban development coming up. So there are layered harms that have continued. And what I think is probably the most important piece is to understand that how intentional and how structural these policies and practices are in place, to a point where the undoing has to be just as strategic, just as structural, just as intentional. Otherwise, you're just going to perpetuate. You could put money on one thing, but if you don't change the structures of government and the way we do business, these harms are going to repeat themselves for the next generation. So it's always my honor and my privilege to be welcomed into the community, to listen and learn, and to hear how hard the communities have worked to be triumphant despite everything. But it shouldn't be that way. Basic human rights should be provided for everyone and shouldn't be based on individual organization efforts. This is a government's responsibility.
And just for clarity, so we've, like I said, heard about that the task force role is to basically make recommendations, and so your research is helping to help them guide and understand the history and what's happened, and maybe take like an account of it so they can make those recommendations. Can you help us understand like your role in terms of, or do you have a role in terms of the recommendations, and whether or not the recommendations are implemented?
Sure. Yeah. So whatever final report we do really is based on whatever the mandate is for each task force. So we respond to the imperative that's put in front of them. So for Detroit, they're looking at housing and economic issues. That said, we do a more comprehensive, holistic analysis because nothing is in isolation, right? Economic disinvestment is going to impact all aspects. Displacement of housing, for instance, is going to have an unbelievable impact on cultural heritage and community. So we do a little bit more of a comprehensive analysis, and we, again, try to look for avenues of entry for policy making. Where might be the ways in which policy could be implemented, and where might the money come from? So ultimately, the report is to be used for the community, by the community, however they want to have it used for. And the same for the task force. They can take pieces of it, utilize it, and the rest throw it away, honestly. But the one piece that I will say is that we have had success in doing these types of reports before and actually having government respond. So, for instance, a couple of years ago, we were working in Chicago. They already had a guaranteed basic income program, and they had funds set aside for that. We suggested a reparations basic income that would target these Black communities that had been intentionally disinvested. We could show that through line. We started with the history, we demonstrated the impact and the contemporary outcomes of that, and suggested that those funds be targeted. That policy was implemented. That said, in Chicago, that said, the mayor did not call it reparations. They kept with the concept of the guaranteed basic income, but they targeted those communities. So there has been success. We worked with Evanston and the housing reparations. That said, this is really hard work. This is really hard work, and it really requires the investment and input from the entire community. So if you're listening to this podcast, I would suggest that you learn, come take part in the community engagement processes, speak to people like Piper who are already working in spaces to address things like environmental injustice, and find out how you can motivate and get other members of your community to take part and to be a voice in this process and to make it as democratic as possible.
And then I have two other questions because I know you got to go. Help me understand, because California got reparations or no? Okay, and like, what's the difference between what they got and what we're looking for? Or can you help us understand all that?
Yeah. So California had a mandate for a reparations task force for the entire state. New York just passed the second state reparations task force as well. California had funding for their reparations task force, and they spent significant time over a year really creating and putting together an extensive report with hundreds of recommendations. As soon as that report, the final report came out, the reparations task force sunset. Now, there were a couple of members on that task force who have continued to, were a part of the legislation and have followed through and are exploring what, if any, of those recommendations will be followed through by California. We are waiting to see what happens. We don't know what California will actually put into legislation, but they have the recommendations in front of them. They had support. They did extensive community engagement. And as I said, they came up with hundreds of recommendations. New York Reparations Task Force has just been formed. I know the people on that task force. They are people just like you, just like other community members who have been involved in reparations. There's a man who's one of the members who's been in charge of Black Veterans Reparations Program. There's a woman on the program, as a member that has been involved in economic justice. So they have an incredible task force, but they are just beginning this process of exploring what their policy suggestions might be. I will just say that basically these task forces are being tasked with proving a case for reparations. And while that feels frustrating to the Black community, it's basically to make this as legislatively sound, as constitutionally sound as possible, so that you cannot have organizations come in and undo whatever policies are put in place. So we can say Evanston has been successful so far. Their reparations have been in place for several years now, 2019, 2020, 2020, so 4 years. And it's held constitutional muster so far. So the hope is to do the same in other cities and other states.
Okay. Thank you so much. Before you go, can you give us again your name and your org and your role?
Sure. Again, my name is Linda Mann, co-founded the African American Redress with Professor Justin Hansford, who will be here tomorrow night. He is the U.S. delegate for the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. He's raising up reparations at an international level for people in the U.S. I am a professor, associate adjunct professor at Columbia University, and I also oversee another program called the John Mitchell Jr. Program, where we do community-based archiving with communities, freedmen communities. So I'm really busy. I've been in this space for 15 plus years, working with at first very micro local communities, so very, very specific harms. But I've seen enough to know that I truly am deeply, deeply committed to reparations. I firmly believe that just as strategic as these policies of disinvestment and discrimination were, that we need to do the same to alter them. So thank you so much, Piper, for allowing me to speak.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really, really grateful to have spoken with you today. You really helped me understand a lot of the work that you're doing, and you are an incredible person on the field. So thank you.
So thank you. So can you ask Baba Jaman? He's at that table. See that table? All right. I want to just have him talk about thank you so much. So we're here at the Alkebu-lan Village here in Detroit at the Detroit Reparations Task Force Town Hall. And there are different people from the community who are speaking. We're hearing from them. There's, like I said, a historic bus tour to help the people of the committee that are working with this research team inform the research team about the harms that have taken place in Detroit. So the reason I want to bring Baba Jaman over here is because they have Baba Jaman, who is now the official City of Detroit historian. And I'm glad that they have you giving your tour. So Baba, just so far, just to let you know, we've heard already from one of the members of the Reparations Task Force. We've heard from an elder, Baba Victor Gibson, who kind of told us about in Cobra, Mama Joanne Watson, and the work that's done on the national level. We've heard from the African American organization that is helping to put together the research for the task force to make their recommendations. And so I went today on a tour. It's not my first tour with you, but it was my first tour doing that particular tour with you. Can you talk about your role with the Reparations Task Force and how you're helping inform their work? And your name and what you do and all
Yes.
that.
Hello.
You got to hold that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Piper. I'm Jaman Jordan. I am the official historian for the city of Detroit. But even before that, I was a historian and tour leader for Black Scroll Network History and Tours. And in that capacity, I focused on Detroit's Black history. And so today, yesterday, and tomorrow, I'll be leading tours for the Detroit Reparations Task Force to cover large portions of Detroit's African-American history so that we can understand, get a foundation of, number one, these communities that Black people created that really were havens for their culture and for their psyche and for the economic progress, but also the injustices, the inequality, the attacks on the African-American community in the city of Detroit. So they can see both. They can see that Black people came together, they created their own institutions, they created schools, they created businesses that helped move the community forward. At the same time, there were all these racial injustices in housing, in education, in criminal justice, in banking, in businesses, in politics. So they can see all of these different levels, that they have a foundation of history to work with. There is no way to understand where we are today without talking about this earlier history, which brings us to the condition that exists in the city of Detroit today. So that's my role as the official historian for the city of Detroit. When the Reparations Task Force, which is a city entity, a city of Detroit entity created by the city council and appointed by members of the city council, when they ask for any information regarding Detroit's history from me, then I am happy to provide that, whether it's in a written paper form, whether it's me giving testimony at one of the Reparations Task Force meetings, or whether it's doing a tour, which is what we've been doing for the last couple of days, and we'll be doing one more tomorrow.
So Baba, help us understand. So, and I'm biased, Detroit is like a gold mine in terms of rich history, especially as it relates to Black liberation struggle and Black people leading. I'm gonna say like the narrative of us understanding like how we need to move forward. So there's been several organizations that have been seeded here. This is a place where people would come to learn, to get their political foundation. So help us understand like your role within that ecosphere, because to me that makes a difference in the way in which you do tours, because we could go do a tour, people know history. Help us understand just the level and the quality of the tours that you're giving as it relates to your connection to all of that.
Yeah. So one of the things, let's be clear, that I lead a Black History tour, but I lead my tours because part of my identity is an African-centered identity. So I'm not just spouting out this information. It's coming from the center of the African community. So we Black people in the city of Detroit, we are connected by a long history, of course, a history that's previous to slavery, that precedes slavery and transcends slavery, but also includes this period of oppression. So I'm coming from that center. So I'm centering Black men, Black women, Black organizations, Black institutions, Black churches, Black schools, Black educators. I'm centering that. The solutions to our problems, the solutions to the issues come from within the community. And so I am not talking about just how bad white folks treated us. And I'm not even talking about just how we've had these great Black notables. We've had great people like Oprah Winfrey, or great people like Michael Jordan. I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about that they have a community of people, freedom fighters, people who are starting grassroots organizations, people who are starting businesses, people who are helping people escape from slavery. Organizations in the city of Detroit really have been at the forefront of the fight for freedom, the Black liberation movement, for decades. And if we're talking about reparations, which is what the Detroit Reparations Task Force is focusing on, one thing they know already, because they've been working with me and other folks in the city of Detroit who know this history. One thing they know is that Detroit has been a major part of the reparations movement. They know that the Nation of Islam was founded in the city of Detroit on July 4th, 1930 on Hastings Street, and that part of their demands of the Nation of Islam is that there be land and funding from the federal government. They didn't originally use the word reparations in 1930, but that's what they're talking about. They're talking about reparations. Later, we'll get an organization, the Republic of New Africa, founded in the city of Detroit in 1968, in March of 1968. One of their demands is land in the form of reparations, or reparations in the form of land. When we're talking about the Cobra, National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, founded in the city of Detroit. Reparations Ray Jenkins, right here in the city of Detroit. We're talking about people who are talking about reparations coming out of the city of Detroit, grassroots folks. We're talking about John Conyers when he comes forward with HR 40, which he presents to the United States Congress, the United States House of Representatives. He's being pressured by grassroots organizations, including Cobra, to create this language. That is Detroit. Detroit has been at the forefront. They're not the first. people to demand reparations, but they've been one of the foremost and loudest voices and most significant voices in the push for reparations in this country. So Detroit Reparations Task Force, what we feel is we got to get this right here in the city of Detroit. We got to get this right in the city of Detroit because who Detroit is, this predominantly Black community, one of the most Black large cities in the country. We got that issue. It's been led by Black people for so long, and there's been so many radical, progressive organizations coming out of the Black community in the city of Detroit that have pushed forward this fight for reparations. So when we get this reparations task force report done, it has to be done right, and I'm going to do all I can to make sure that it is.
So, and Baba, help us understand too, because you're from Highland Park, and for people that maybe don't know about Highland Park, I was born in Highland Park, by the way, but for people who don't know about Highland Park, its significance, I know today we saw a couple of Highland Park sites. We didn't really get the full Highland Park, but we did get a couple of key sites, and something I wanted you to touch on as an educator is, so Highland Park lost its school system. So now its school system, if I'm not mistaken, is all charter, which basically is like privatized. Highland Park is a city, so it has a mayor, it has a city council, and all the things. Help us understand, like, well, number one, that connection between education and what it means, what reparations is going to mean, for education. And also, too, what will this mean for Highland Park? What will Detroit getting reparations mean for Highland Park? If you know, and
Yeah. So, of course, you don't have a community if you don't have education. So, if there's no educational institutions, you don't have a complete community. Your community is incomplete. And so, I grew up. I was born and raised in the city of Detroit, but at the border of Detroit and Highland Park. So, I attended both school systems. I was in both communities, and so I grew up attending Highland Park schools. And so, in elementary school, we had swimming pools. Middle school, we had swimming pools. We had a brand new high school that was built, but our earlier high school was connected to the Highland Park Community College. And in Highland Park, if you lived in Highland Park, you could go to Highland Park Community College for free. This is decades before the Kalamazoo Promise, the Detroit Promise, and all of the different cities that now have a promise to the students that if they graduate, they can go to college. So Highland Park had these things because it operated with the financial base that was created in the industrial era of Henry Ford and Chrysler. So we had this base, and African Americans were able to benefit from living in that city, paying taxes in that city, and growing up in that city. But now, what we have done, what has happened is there is no high school in the city of Highland Park, and there's 2 charter schools, K through 8. But even if you go to those 2 charter schools that are in the city of Highland Park, once you graduate from 8th grade, you got to leave the city of Highland Park to continue your education. And you can't go to college because Highland Park Community College has been closed. And so now you don't have a college, you don't have a high school. So that's a significant problem. Back in 2011, there was a lawsuit in Highland Park, and still had a Highland Park High School. And students led a lawsuit called a literacy or right to, because there were no resources in the high school. It was very clear that education wasn't happening. The students would lead a lawsuit. They take it to the Michigan courts, and it goes all the way to the Michigan Supreme Court. And the governor at that time, Rick Snyder, the defense of the state. Now you got to understand what the defense of the state was. The defense of the state was not, we don't have enough money to make sure all the schools are equal. That is not their argument. Their argument is not, we don't have the money to make sure that Highland Park schools are in such bad condition that we don't have the money to bring them up to code. That's not their argument. Their argument is they have no responsibility to educate students. That's the argument that Rick Snyder's defense, the state's defense of not having a real educational system in the city of Highland Park, students not being able to learn how to read. They could have made an argument that maybe more people could have understood, but their argument is they don't even have to educate anybody. The state doesn't have a responsibility to educate anybody. Even though you, as a parent, have to send your kid to school, the state doesn't have to do anything once they get to school. That's their argument. And the Michigan Supreme Court heard that argument and honored it, and they won. So what would happen if a reparations report is done by the Detroit Reparations Task Force and it outlines certain ways to repair, certain ways to fix some of these injustices? Highland Park and other cities can look at that and be able to fashion their own plans for repairing the injustices that have happened in those cities. That's what the importance of this. There are people looking at the city of Detroit, waiting to see what happens in the city of Detroit so that they can begin to fashion their own plans, their own reports, their own task forces to be able to look at the same and similar injustices that have happened in those cities.
So, and then thank you for that. So, and as I let you go, there's another day tomorrow.
Yes.
So, what will we see tomorrow?
Yes. So tomorrow we'll be covering the northeast side of the city of Detroit to the southeast side of the city of Detroit. So we've done Southwest Detroit. We've done the Old West Side. We've done the North End. We've done the Boston Edison neighborhood. We've done 12th Dexter Linwood neighborhood. We've done the Burwood Wall. We've done Conant Gardens. We've done the Sojourner Truth Homes. So we're going to start on the far northwest side of the city of Detroit. So think Gratiot in 8 Mile. We're going to start there, bordering Warren and bordering East Point and bordering Harper Woods section of the city of Detroit. We're going to start there, and we're going to go all the way through the east side. We're going to go down to the Mack and Bewick neighborhood. We're going to go to the border of Detroit and Grosse Pointe area. We're going to go down and end, and we're going to go to Pole Town. We're going to go to the areas that border Hamtramck. We're going to go to the Cultural Center neighborhood. But the very important part that we're going to go to is what used to be Black Bottom and Paradise Valley. So this is the tour that's going to cover those important sections of the city of Detroit. There were 3 major urban renewal projects in the city of Detroit from 1950, or really from 1949 to about 1970, so the late 60s. And they are the destruction of Black Bottom, the destruction of Hastings Street, which also will begin the end of Paradise Valley, and the Sugar Hill neighborhood, which will be replaced by the Detroit Medical Center. So we're going to learn that history and how the city played the lead role in destroying. So we're talking about city government at this time. City government played the lead role in destroying those historic African-American neighborhoods.
And let us know before you go, like your name again, your role, and where can folks find you, because you're doing these amazing tours for all kinds of organizations.
Thank you. So again, my name is Jamon Jordan. I'm the official historian for the city of Detroit, but I'm also the tour leader for Black Scroll Network History and Tours. If you're trying to take a tour and learn some of this history, the way to contact me is at Black Scroll Network, a scroll like a scroll of paper, SCROLL, Black Scroll Network at gmail.com. Black Scroll Network at gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Jamon Black Scroll Historian. You can find me on Facebook at Black Scroll Network History and Tours or Jamon Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you, Baba. Thank you so much. Great tour. I'm gonna see you tomorrow. All right, there's community members here. Hey,
And your aunt's roommate, Dawn.
yeah. How you doing? You all right? What you doing here?
I just came.
Wait, say hi.
Hi, hello everybody. Hi everybody. I just
That's my auntie Dawn's old roommate.
yes. Hi. I just came
Okay.
after school,
Okay.
and then I just came because I don't get too far.
Oh.
I'm still in my family home.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes.
Okay. You too. I'm gonna tell Auntie Dawn I saw you. So this event is ending now, but the work is not ending, and so we're gonna be. Actually, Baba, don't you want to come here for a minute? This is another elder. Hey, this is Compost John. I gotta get some compost from that guy, Sanctuary Farms. So Well, so we're here at the Reparations Task Force Town Hall. We heard from Baba Victor Gibson, who was within Cobra, but we have another Baba, that's Baba Bomani, Malcolm X grassroots movement. Well, another one of our elders in the movement that's been doing a lot of work around a lot of various struggles within Black liberation movement. Baba, you were an attendee tonight of the Reparations Task Force Town Hall as an attendee. So we've heard from a member of the task force. We've heard from some of the folks doing the research, like, tasked to do the research to inform the task force. We've heard from one of the elders, Baba Gibson, about Cobra and the connection between the national work and understanding, like, on the local level. And then we just heard from Baba Jaman, who just kind of gave us his role, talking about how he's kind of informing the folks that are visiting here from the universities as to how to look at Detroit and add on to their research. As a community member, community leader, who was an attendee of the task force, I was over here doing a lot of interviews. So I'll help the viewers understand, like, what did you experience here this evening? And what are your thoughts about what you experienced? And start with your name and your organization and what you do.
Uh, my name is Ani Mashan Bomani. I'm the Detroit chairman, Michigan chairman of the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, and a proud member of the New African Peoples Organization, which I said earlier, the chairman, Chuck Lumumba, who passed away a few years ago, but members like him and Milton Henry and his brother Gaidi were one of the first people to put together a pamphlet, information about reparations in this country, along with John Conyers. So we need to come to those people who have a history of dealing with reparations, and maybe some of these new people who are just kind of showing up at the last minute. And Cobra's been around a long time. I told him about another organization that actually is being funded by the Republicans, supposedly trying to get reparations for us. And now they want us to prove that we had ancestors who were enslaved. So, but we know a lot of those records were destroyed. But basically, I'm trying to say we need to come together and stop trying to make excuses why we cannot come together. Everybody cannot be in charge. Everybody cannot run things. We need lots of foot soldiers. We don't need a whole bunch of leaders. We need foot soldiers out there doing the work in order to let them know, especially in a city with a white mayor. There's no reason in the world why we should have a white mayor here. There's no reason in the world why Dan Gilbert and all these rich white millionaires and billionaires should control what's going on here in Detroit. Black folks need to control what's going on. We need to come together. We need to buy black no matter what. Buy black no matter what. Stop trying to make excuses. Going out to the suburbs in the middle of nowhere to buy stuff. And if something happened to you, then you want to raise hell about discrimination. Stay here. Secure your own backyard. Secure your own backyard. Protect your own backyard. Get rid of these white folks. Run them out of town and make sure that black folks get what they need in this city. Thank you.
Baba, you just getting started.
I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to be. They told me I'm kind of rough, And at one point I thought I was going to be a kinder, gentler Bomani, but at this point I don't think there's any reason to be that kinder or gentler. I'm getting old. Kwame Otta told me once you get old, you can say any damn thing you want. So I'm over 70 now, so I'm say whatever I want to say. And there's a lot of issues here in Detroit that we should have never allowed a city that is was at one point almost 95% black. Under Coleman Young, we had this stuff under control. Soon as he passed away, they sent the Sambos in, the handkerchief heads, and we have been recovering ever since then from that kind of onslaught. The white folks are taking over. They're running through our neighborhoods like they run everything. The mayor just lies to us constantly. They owe us plenty money and taxes. If they don't do anything but give our tax money back, give all our tax money back, and not make black folks pay taxes ever again. For 400 years of enslavement, we should never have to pay taxes. The land should be ours. Our mantra is free the land. free the land for the black people who have worked and slaved and put this country together. White folks didn't do nothing but supervise, and they didn't even do a damn job of that. They did not contribute anything to America, and if you know your history, they didn't really contribute anything to the world. They stole everything, put their name on it, and said they did it. We need the truth to be put out, and if we had the money for to put our schools back together, they need to give this money to these individual parents so we can build African-centered schools so that we can try to teach our kids about who they are, just like the Jews do with their yeshiva. You know, we need to have African-centered education point blank everywhere that's a majority black population, and tell them the truth about who they are so that they don't have to feel so inferior. We still got issues with inferiority in our community. People still running around, you know, straightening their hair. I actually saw somebody with a process. I can't believe that. After 50 years, he got a process. Come on now. Got pump waves. Come on. We need to feel good about our nappy hair. We, like Malcolm said, who taught you to hate yourself? We need to stop playing games and stop making it so that our standard of beauty, our standard of living is our own, not theirs. We need to have our own. We need an African-centered world view. And if you don't want to be African, because I did meet somebody a couple of days ago that said, I'm no African. I'm like, okay, well, I ain't no friend of yours. Bye. You know, I don't have time to argue with people about whether they're African or not. And as much as we love gold and diamonds, where all the gold and diamonds come from, and they're controlling, they trying to take over Africa, and we trying to run away from Africa. They want to control the Russians, the Chinese, the white folks. Everybody want control of Africa because that's where the money is. And you run around here talking about I ain't no African. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry. I'm not. I'm
fine, Baba. I mean,
I mean, I can go on. I can go on for a couple hours.
I'm gonna say this. I don't think there's anything wrong with being upset because it's upsetting.
Right.
So it's upsetting. So I don't understand how people can talk about the harms that have happened to people and not be upset. It's very upsetting. And also too, the sustained struggles that you've been in and continuing to see the losses. That's upsetting. To continue to see the consciousness, I would say, like devolve, like you were saying. At a certain point, we had Coleman Young, who commandeered the resources for the city and controlled the resources for the city. And now we
let him take
we had Archer, who open up the door all the way down to Duggan, who now, like you're saying, and I don't think, like, if people are not in Detroit and don't understand the significance, like, well, so what, you have a white mayor. We've had black leadership my whole life, mostly until we got this black mayor. Right. So people my age, I'm 52, grew up in a city seeing black leadership all around. And that is significant in this world where blackness is continued to be erased and who we are is continued to be erased. So there's no apology for being upset about things that are very hurtful, harmful, and upsetting. So I'm glad your heart's still beating and that you still got consciousness left in you. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people your age have given up. A lot of people who were in the struggle gave up.
They say, I used to be black. That's what I hear for some of these people. I used to be black. I used to be in the movement. One of our swindlers in this city, he said he used to be in the movement. He's no longer in the movement. Now he's owed his allegiance to the white mayor, the right mayor. That's what he said. The white mayor is the right mayor. What kind of nonsense is that? And he's supposed to be the head of the NAACP. What kind of mess is that? This is it's getting out of hand. You know, they are controlling the minds of our people here to where they can't even think clearly for themselves. I ain't got no problem admitting I'm an angry black man. What about it? What about it? And I'm going to be in this to the day I die. Like Kwame Kenyatta said, I'm in it to win it. For days on end. So we have got to stop playing with these people because they ain't playing with us. They want us away from here. They want to get rid of the evidence. That's what they doing. by lying, stealing, cheating in any way they can to get rid of the evidence, like they doing in Florida. They want to get rid of the books. You know, they want to destroy the books, destroy the history, don't want you to teach anything about black folks because they know that black folks did everything. White folks didn't do nothing but rob, steal, and cheat. That's all they good at, and that's all they've been doing for the last 1,000 years. And if anybody don't like it, you can come see me. I got some. I'm sorry. There you go.
So, well, that was Baba Bomani. So, tell us again the organizations you rep and what you're doing in 2024.
Okay, I'm the Detroit co-chairman along with Shoshana Shakur, whose brother actually is one of the people put together the reparations book. Co-chairman of the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, which is a national organization, and also the larger organization, which is NAPO, New African People's Organization. And at one time, we were part of the Republic of New Africa, but we still have connections with them. We still want our 5 states because we don't think that we can live with these people. These people are insane. We don't really think we can live with them. And don't be scared. I don't really want to say this stuff. Don't be scared. Protect yourself. These people can be defeated. They are not all powerful. Remember that they're not all powerful. You know, we can protect ourselves. We can fight. We can do what is necessary. And like Malcolm say, liberation, freedom by any means necessary.
All right. Well, you heard it. So this is when I tell y'all about the legacy that I come from. So my uncle, Baba Ibn Pori Pitts, Baba Aaron Ibn Pori Pitts, who is one of the founders of the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, as well as Republic of New Africa. These are some of the elders, you know, that are part of our community that have been fighting these fights way longer than I've been alive. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. I wanted to attend the task force meeting, but I was like, I gotta do a podcast. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I just blend the two so I can talk to people that are at the task force meeting and, you know, show up. So I'll do the best I can to try to come to more events in the future. So I want to thank you all for tuning in to Piper Carter Podcast. I want to thank everybody who came and was a guest here. And we're going to see y'all right here, 8 p.m. Eastern, next week, Tuesday. And Freedom Land. Peace.